man that needs no extra introduction. Gordon Hester, part 2. Grab a drink, hydrate, and let's rock on.
Okay, is everybody ready? Check, check, check. Can you hear me? Awesome. So how have you guys enjoyed the day so far? Show of hands. Yes, excitement's great. Excellent. Well, this was an interesting part of my training because it continues to change in time. And if you've ever seen me train twice at a conference, there's one thing that I never do for the last one, and that's prepare. And part of the reason is because one of the great parts about a conference is that you get to listen and to hear and to kind of figure out what kind of message you want to share with everybody, what type of content you want to share with everybody. So I want to start with something that we have talked about. I talked about. I certainly heard Lorian talk about it. What 2 crises are we solving? Health and what? Health and financial. Would everybody agree with that? How much of everybody's mission is tied to one of those 2 things, by a show of hands? Okay, so pretty much everybody in the room. So sometimes the answer is a higher quality question, so I'm going to ask you this question. Is there another crisis that I can tell you that if you can solve this, you will have a higher level of results than you would have solving either of those crises? Can you imagine what that would be? Who can tell me what it would be? Purpose? Time? Yes. I'm sorry? Self-belief, okay. Lifestyle, that's a part of the financial piece. Generational change. So interesting things here. And by the way, this is a question I have asked myself for many, many years as I've been around this whole thing and certainly been around all types of business. This is a crisis that nobody talks about. And this crisis is called mediocrity. And I share that with you because if you take the concept of mediocrity and I say the people that you're talking with that have financial problems or health problems, what problem do they really have? Their standards. They do not operate their life in a way where they get the results that they want. So as I've looked around the world and kind of my whole life studying things, I find that mediocrity is pretty much the norm. What has puzzled me forever is why. Why is this world that has so much opportunity in a place where what I typically see as mediocrity? Now, let me define mediocrity so everybody doesn't feel like, oh, here comes a judgment ramp. Because I don't consider mediocrity to be average. Mediocrity to me is when you look in the mirror and you see what your life is and what it could be, how big of a gap is there? And you begin to ask yourself, am I playing too small in life? And is the problem related to everything that's going on in my life, not really anything more that I'm living and choosing to leave a life of mediocrity? So I've kind of looked at this and seen people that have been through this journey, and kind of when I think about mediocrity and why everybody has it, I think I know the reason. I believe the reason is because society programs us for this. At the end of the day, I look at how I was raised, and I was raised with a mindset. And I was raised with a mindset to do all the things that were taught to me by my parents. I was supposed to do well in school. When I got out of school, I was supposed to go to college. When I got to college, I was going to get a great job. When I got a great job, life was going to be magnificent until I retired at age 65. And wow, let me tell you what, life did not play out that way. So what you have to realize, let me kind of give you an example of this. Does anybody know what this is? It's an economic model. Nobody. Okay, so I'm going to explain this because this is a perfect example of what mediocrity looks like in the world today. How many of you in this room value happiness? Okay, every one of you. Perfect. Me too. So this is actually an economic model. It's used by certain countries to measure happiness. It's called a U-bend. And here's what the U-bend tells us. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my God, this is my life. The U-bend says when we're somewhere getting ready to enter the work world, so we'll call this 18 to 22, in that range typically, our happiness is at an all-time high. Why do you think our happiness is an all-time high? Yeah, we've had the best time of our life, the best days, people taking care of us. And when we look at the world, what do we see? Awesome. Like all the things that have been promised us. And then life starts. And what we know is as life starts, what happens is over time, happiness goes like this. And then at some point, it hits the bottom. Does anybody know what that point is? What age that is? "46." Sometimes they might call this a midlife crisis. I've certainly had this sung in my ears a couple times in my life. Now, if I'm doing the conformity plan and this is what happiness looks like, how many of you want this to be your story? So if you don't want it to be your story, then what you have to do is begin to reprogram. You have to begin to change two things: your mindset and the execution of what you're doing in life. So by the way, there is good news for this. One thing here. Anybody know why this age is the age? What there is about this age that kind of speaks to the point of being unhappy? Getting closer to 50, I like that. Anybody been over 50 but me? And somebody please raise their hand. Okay, good, thank you. I will tell you, when I'm a pretty upbeat person, when I hit 50, I literally was depressed for 3 days. Because what I was depressed about wasn't the amazing life I had, it's that it went so fast and I'm probably on the backside of it, and this was sort of like an oh no. So there is something else to this. And what they know from this study is this is the average date when people are sort of at the end of raising their kids. So what we sort of learn in here is there's a couple things that go on here. One is this job world that we were promised doesn't work out very well. And the other was whoever told us about family and raising kids and responsibility sort of left chapters out of the book. And ultimately what you learn is this is the hard way. And then something changes. People reach a breaking point. And at that breaking point, they begin to look at life differently, and they begin to make different choices. They begin to change their belief system, change what they do. Said there's lots of names for this, but what you see when they do this is they begin to climb back up. And later on in life, they actually tend to be very, very happy. So if you kind of look at, by the way, I'm on this side, which is always a good thing. If you kind of look at what happens with this happiness, the mediocrity thing is caught up with them. The conformity thing is caught up with them. So what you normally see people do is contract because they can't handle what's going on. What do they talk about? Simplification. How do I get rid of things? How do I have less things in life? How do I begin to contract? Which I will tell you is not the real path to happiness, because the standard tied to happiness that you have to pursue in life is a standard of abundance. So when I got to this point, Jackie, how old am I now? 54? Oh my gosh. I know I look 60, but please just go with me. I'm 54. When I got to 54, I will tell you, we had moved down our life. We had downsized only because our kids were gone, and we were in a big house in the water. It didn't make any sense, and we wanted a simpler life, and I wanted to be able to focus, and there were various reasons around this. But I will tell you, what did not simplify was my passion and my purpose in life. And this has been talked about a lot today, passion and purpose. But I will tell you, in the kind of spectrum, if you want to move away from mediocrity, who can tell me what you have to move toward? Greatness. So if I want to move away from mediocrity and I want to move toward greatness, there's paths that I can take. So for a lot of people, what do they teach us? You have to have goals. And we have people that have goals. And I will tell you, for me, goals are great. They give direction. They kind of make me grow. But at the end of the day, anything that has an end point to me has an end point to growth. So I never put a lot of value into goals, but I understand that other people do. I actually live my life very organically. If you were to ask me what my goals are, I cannot tell you because I really don't have them defined like most people. But if you were to ask me what my purpose is and how I live my life and how I live my journey, I could give you amazing details and amazing information because I learned a long time ago, mastering the journey is more important than chasing the destination. So as we move toward this, we have goals. And what's the next thing that we talk about? We talk about our why, our passion. How many have heard all about that today? Yeah, and I'm sure all of you are buying into that, and I did too. And then I kind of realized that when I looked at my passion, if you think about yours for a second, let me ask you this question. If you fulfilled it, is there something else beyond it? Because I will tell you, if it is, then there is something greater in the formula that will drive greatness. And that something greater is called your identity. So I will tell you, this is something I've studied a lot about in my life. I will tell you, when you have an identity that your life is going to be about greatness, that you are going to ride in that extra mile, that you are going to define yourself different than everybody else, and that ultimately this is who you are. And what defines your life is not what you do, but the level of impact you have on not only your life, but the world around you. So if you want to get into the game of greatness, what I will tell you is you have to get into the game of impact, and you have to take it at every level. In our business, we talked about in the leadership conference, in our business, it's critical mass, it's passionate brand ambassadors, it's how many we can get. And the more we get, the more things change. And although we talk about the health journey and the concept of customers and changing people's lives, and we talk about the opportunity in changing people's financial life, we never really talk about, hey, what would happen if we had the ability to change people's standards, if we had the ability to get people out of that mediocre thinking that creates this kind of a life and into something different. By the way, this doesn't get better financially. I have on my website, I have a blog that I did for educated people in the U.S., and everybody's like, oh, they make the highest level of income. Do you know that statistically, by the time they're 65, most of them are $600,000 in debt? So this doesn't kind of play out well any way you have. So we have to talk about how do we find greatness. And if we're going to find greatness, here's where we're going to start. You start with mindset. Everybody that you ever talk to in life will tell you it's mindset. Now, I don't have time to make a seminar on mindset, but I'm going to give you some places to look. First and foremost are your standards. The standards are what level you live your life. And I will tell you, in my opinion, there is nothing more important as a part of your identity to determine greatness than your standards. And remember this, whatever your standards are, the results are one level lower. So if I were to ask Kira, for instance, what is your customer care? And she was to tell me, it's great. What I would tell you is that the results then are good. It's always one level lower. So the only way that we can have greatness is to really chase standards and goals that are impossible to obtain. Like, how crazy is that? And I'm going to give you the four that I think that matter the most, okay? First is the standard of abundance. Abundance is what Gary Vee would call hustle. It is that mindset and that burning passion inside of you that say, listen, at the end of the day, no matter where I'm at, there's more that I can do. There's more that I can give. I do not ever see a point of stopping. Can you have abundance? Absolutely not. I believe if you have abundance, you don't have a big enough target. And if you've accomplished that target, you should change gears. Good example in my life. Early on in my life, my abundance that I sought was financial abundance. I don't know about any of you, but when I was young, I just wanted to make a lot of money. And, I had success in that. And I will tell you, it's not that money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like it used to because I'm in a different financial position. But my abundance today isn't about money. It's about impact. And I know that if I have an abundance about impact and I know how to execute and work a plan and continue to grow and know how to pivot, I can have anything in life. I can literally change everything about my life. So you begin to seek different standards in your life. So abundance is number one. The second is excellence. So excellence is the path to constant and never-ending growth. The more you seek excellence, the more you will begin to continue to grow. Can you achieve excellence? Some people would say, yes, I believe you cannot achieve excellence because there's always a higher gear. There's always something to learn. What's the goal? Not to obtain excellence, but to fall in love with the process of pursuing it. if you find these people, these are the self-learners that you never really have to teach and manage. They just run on their own. The third for me is service. Impact, although impact is there's a duality to it. So impact in one respect, where I started was, what's the impact on my life and my family's life? I wanted to have things. I had dreams and I had material wishes and all these types of things. And over the years, what's been interesting is those haven't went up, they've actually decreased. Because with wisdom, you begin to understand what's important in life. And now kind of my service is what drives everything, not all these other things. But I will tell you, the more you are defined by service and impacting others, not just yourself, the more impact you will make on the world and more success you will have in business. Just kind of that simple. So the last one to me is work ethic. So if I'm going to take Kira and I again, and I'm going to give her the good team and I'm going to take the hard part. So if Kira had a team of workers, and I'm not talking about people that have discipline, I'm talking about people that have discipline where it defines who they are. If I took them and put them in a street, they would sweep all day long because that's who they are. You ever met those kind of people? They're those competitive, tenacious people. And that's what her team was. And my team were the dreamers. We were the ones that just had all the vision boards. We could do vision boards. We could do webinars on vision boards. We had all the goals and all this kind of stuff. I will tell you, in the real world, she will absolutely kick my ass. So what you want to develop in business is relationships with workers, not dreamers. What's a better combination? A worker that has a dream. And that's the ultimate team member. So I begin to kind of look at those things and I say, if I continue to raise my standards, then I know that I will raise the quality of my life and I will begin to move toward greatness. The other one that I think is really important, and it was mentioned today, is beliefs. So here's kind of the short and skinny on beliefs. Our brain focuses on something and then it tries to figure out what it means. And the way it does that is it makes conclusions, and those conclusions are our beliefs. So all this programming of conformity is stuff that's come from experiences. We live it, we focus, we give meaning to things. And I will tell you, not all this works the same, but here's the beautiful thing. What we realize about the programming is that we're not stuck with it. And kind of a classic example I would give you is fear. How many people have fear in here? Okay, so almost everybody in the room. Fear is a limiting belief, but the reality is, for some people, it is the thing that motivates them. For most people, it is what paralyzes them. Fear, to me, is motivating because my fear is not related to failure. It's related not to making the most out of my life. So if you have fear, I will tell you to target it at something better. Figure out how to make fear motivate you and to begin to change your life. And when you do that, you can build this unshakable personality, this unshakable mindset that no matter what you can succeed, no matter what you can overcome, no matter what somebody says or does, it doesn't affect or allow anybody to hijack the power of your brain. And if there's one thing that I wish I could give to you today, it is the ability to do that, because I will tell you, so many people suffer from this disease of mediocrity because they actually give a shit what other people think. The reality is the only thing that matters is the person you see in the mirror. And if you've given your best effort to something and somebody, and that isn't enough, well, that's on them, not on you. And if anything, that should just inspire you to get better. So we know this. Thank you. So we know that if we can raise our standards and get rid of these limiting beliefs, we can strengthen our mindset and we are moving toward greatness. And this is the biggest part of the game. But make no mistake, the game of execution is the game of business. And we think all the time it's passion and purpose. Listen, I know people that are really successful in business. I brought Tony Robbins up here right now, and you asked him, what's the secret to business? He would tell you execution. If I set Jeff Bezos down here at Amazon and said, what's the secret to business? He would say execution. I know somebody that worked at a company that Jeff Bezos ran, and when he showed up, that guy literally showed up with a stopwatch to time how fast something got off a truck and worked to a sheet because he was looking to build efficiency. Execution is the mastery of business. And for those of you that don't agree, and you think, no, it's really a game of motivation, it's really a game of hope, Listen, you can be motivated. I remember years ago, does anybody know who Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar are? Yeah, two very famous personal development and speakers. And they used to have this really cool debate, and this is what the debate was. Zig believed that motivation came first. If you're not motivated, you won't do. Jim thought, well, if I motivate before I educate and learn to get skill sets and educate or execute, what I end up with is a motivated idiot. So you have to be careful that what you're motivating creates the result that you want. So I'm all for the motivation game, but I will tell you there's nothing more motivating than results. There's nothing more motivating than executing and winning at a high level. So I begin to operate my life that way. And as I look at this, I'm going to kind of share a story with you about a friend of mine so that you can see how this plays out in life. My friend's name is Michael Novogratz. Does anybody know Michael Novogratz? Nobody. Good. I met Michael in Fiji at a oneness event where I learned how to put my hands on people and do blessings. It was a kind of a weird experience, but I met Michael because Michael was a wrestler and I was a jiu-jitsu guy, and my ears are kind of banged up and his were too, and the Fijian guy with us said, hey, do you guys play rugby? So we were like, okay, so maybe this means we're supposed to be together. Now at this spiritual retreat, there was a rule, and that rule was you're not allowed to ask anybody what they do. So I didn't know what he did. But then 5 days into the retreat, he says, I know we're supposed to talk about what we do, but do you mind if I ask you a question? And I was like, fire away. I love to solve problems. Maybe this would be another problem-solving opportunity with a really cool guy. And he asked me, I'll never forget this question. How much do you think my quarterly tax bill is? So quarterly tax bill is what do you pay in taxes for a 3-month period? And I was like, no idea. Don't even know how to guess. He said, my quarterly tax bill is $70 million US. The quarterly tax bill. And I literally was like, what the hell do you do? Like, I had no idea that this guy, I've never met anybody that had a tax bill of $70 million. I haven't met many people that have made $70 million. So I don't know about you, but when this happened, you know what I said? Tell me more. I want to understand the story. So Michael, his sort of claim to success is in high school he was a good athlete. And he was a good student, two things that matter. And he got accepted to one of the most prestigious schools in the U.S. called Princeton University. And he got accepted there because he wasn't necessarily the best student, but he was the head of the varsity wrestling team. And because he went to Princeton and because he was the head of the wrestling team, when he came out to get a job, which he was taught back then, he got a job with a company called Goldman Sachs. Okay, so I don't know much about Goldman Sachs. Seems like everybody makes a lot of money there. It seems like that's a great place that people want to go. So I said, so tell me about your career at Goldman Sachs. Is that where you made all your money? No, I really didn't do that well at Goldman Sachs. I was there 10 years and I only left with $200 million. And I remember thinking, wow, it really sucks to be you. I mean, I can't imagine that you only left with $200 million. But he actually left on bad terms. I'm not going to get into that story because it's a bit personal. But it was what happened afterwards. So when you look at your standards, when you look at the impact you're making, how many of you, if I put you in a business or an opportunity that after 10 years you had $200 million would be done? Be honest. Okay. I'm not really sure back then that I wouldn't have too. But Michael wasn't done. He was actually just getting started. So he decided to take all that knowledge and all those contacts, and he started a hedge fund called Fortress Investments. And Fortress Investments managed billions and billions of dollars. And then Michael, being that creative, innovative, competitive person that had all these knowledge and all this skill set and all these contacts, said, what if I take this hedge fund public and be the first one to do that? So he took this hedge fund public, and at 43 years old, in one day, he made $2.3 billion in cash. In one day. How many of you would have been done at the $2.3 billion? Here's the interesting thing. The biggest part of his impact occurred after that. because he told me this story in Fiji. You know what his highest quality problem was? He couldn't figure out what to do with the money. Like, seriously? I mean, give this problem to me. I'd love to be. He didn't know what to do with, $2.3 billion. Thank you. So Michael ended up going through he looked for something else to serve another impact. And remember I told you he was a wrestler. And what he began to see was the Olympic Committee was taking away wrestling from the Olympics, something that had been there forever, something that was dear to his heart. And he was the one that put up all the money and did everything that was necessary to keep wrestling in the Olympics. And today, his whole life is no longer about money, it's about impact, but the reality, it was always about impact. And what defined him wasn't just what he did, was that he never stopped. That is the mindset. He had the mindset and he had the execution. Now, I have kind of limited time, and I'm sorry for that, but I do want to this concept of greatness and the cost of not pursuing it, I want you to understand what that looks like. And I'm not really sure I can do it justice. So I remembered a video that I saw. You guys remember Jim Rohn? Well, Jim Rohn, when he passed away, one of my friends did a service for him. And all the people that Jim Rohn had touched and changed in life, a number of the big speakers came in to share their story about Jim Rohn. So can you turn that on for me, please?
It's an honor to be able to say a few words about Jim. And just looking at people that I admire in this industry, that we've come together to honor a great man. I look at Tony, that I raised my children on your voice. I look at Dr. Dennis Waitley. Look at Brian Tracy. My children have heard your voices ringing in our home. Harvey McKay and so many others. And Jim Rohn. I quote Jim Rohn every week as a speaker. I met Jim Rohn many years ago with a gentleman by the name of William E. Bailey, who wished he could be here. William Bailey had a company called Best Line Products. And he spoke in Columbus, Ohio at the Neal House Hotel. I was at another meeting, and I heard his voice coming through the room, and I came over to hear what was going on. And he introduced Jim. And the power of his words, when Jim finished speaking, I ran downstairs and called a friend named Robert Boyd and said, listen, I've got to get involved in this business. Because Jim spoke, I bought $7,200 worth of biodegradable soap. Because Jim spoke, I have some Ziff in my house right now. I had it, Tony, brought to the house and put in the living room. So when I came home, I'd have to step in and go around, stacked all the way to the ceiling, because he helped me to believe that I could live my dream. Because Jim spoke. You think about this person that you now see. I did not know that he existed. I was born in a poor section of Miami, Florida called Liberty City, an abandoned building on a floor with a twin brother. And we were adopted by Mrs. Mamie Brown. She was 46, third grade education. We ate the food left over from the families that she cooked for on Miami Beach. Kind and generous people. We wore the hand-me-down clothes of the children that she kept. When I was in fifth grade, I was labeled educable, mentally retarded, put back from the fifth grade to the fourth grade, and failed again when I was in the eighth grade. And with that limited and diminished sense of self, Robert Boyd gave me a Jim Rohn speech. And because he spoke how people live their lives as a result of the story they believe about themselves, he interrupted the story that I believed about myself. And when he spoke, he empowered me to begin to become, as Mother Teresa would say, a pencil in the hand of God and start writing a new chapter in my life. When he spoke, I began to see the possibilities of not being where I was. He taught me that my history did not have to become my future. When he spoke, he was able to help me to begin to see that all of us have greatness within us. But greatness, it's a choice. It's not our destiny. Let us say together, live full, die empty. The ideal situation for a man or woman to die is to have family members praying with them as they cross over. But I know that, imagine, if you will, being on your deathbed and standing around your bed, the ghost of the dreams, the ideas, the abilities, and the talents given to you by life, but you, for whatever reason, you never acted on those ideas. You never pursued those dreams. You never used those gifts. And there they are standing around your bed, looking at you with large, angry eyes, saying, "We came to you, and only you could have given us life. And now we must die with you forever." When Jim spoke, Jim said, "When the end comes for you, let it find you conquering a new mountain, not sliding down an old one." Jim taught us that things may happen to you and things may happen around you, but the only things that really count are the things that happen in you. Jim teaches us now that recessions restores resourcefulness. Jim speaks to us now daily as we are the embodiment of his message and as we must take it into the future to continue the spirit and the legacy that the casket and the grave cannot hold, because he's here with us. And I'd like to leave this with you. I don't know what your goals are. I know what your dream is. Here's what I know. This man touched my life. Here's what I know. This guy that you now see, I did not know he existed. When he spoke, I died to who I was to give birth to who I'm still becoming. And something, when we were in Singapore, and I remember as I was getting ready to speak, he started taking notes. I said, "Jim, don't take any notes." He said, "Why?" I said, "This is your stuff." So he loved for me to say this, and I dedicate this to you in his spirit and memory. If you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it, if all that you dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, and if you gladly sweat for it and fret for it and plan for it, and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, and if you simply go after that thing that you want with all of your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold, poverty, famish, or gulf, sickness or pain of body and brain can keep you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset it, with the help of God, you'll get it. This has been Mrs. Mamie Brown's Baby Boy and Jim Rohn's Pride and Joy. God bless you, God bless your dream, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to end on this. Every one of you out here have greatness within you. The choice is whether you're going to tap it. I always tell people the greatest pivot you can make is a decision to live the masterpiece you were meant to live. And I wish that for you. Thank you.